I'm Eloise Cooper and I'm going to talk you through some of my ideas today and the way that I develop, really. I really just have this sudden impulse to just draw my ideas and start work, but it's always best to think about how they link, how they impact me, how they can develop further, and really focus on what people do with these ideas and what other people have developed and how I can bring that further into my own life. Our topic is positive and negative, and I think this is an awful topic. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, what can I do with this? What am I gonna do? Oh my god, I'm gonna fail. This is terrible. What an awful, awful topic. But when I really started to think about it, I managed to think about it further and deeper and more so, and I started to think about porcelain and charcoal. I started to really start to put things together in my head, and I came up with these ideas. Take something really simple like this teacup, and I would think about what it was like. I would think about the glazes that are on it, which is just a simple white glaze on porcelain. It's just teacup. But then I started looking at it further and looking at the detail on it and the gilding and how this makes it perfect, how this makes it as it should be, how it makes it pretty and dainty and sweet, and what would happen if you suddenly blew that all out of proportion. If you put loads and loads of thick glaze on, it wouldn't make it richer, it would make it fat and gross and slimy, and it would look too much. And how if you made the walls really thick and chunky, if you added more material to this, it wouldn't improve it at all. In fact, it would just degrade it. And at the same time, if you took away from this, if you stripped the clay bare, if you took off all of the wonderful patterning on it, if you took away the wonderful gilding and the marks on it, it would just become boring, and it would become overly simple, and it would be degraded from what it is now to something lesser than itself. Not something it was before, but something lesser, because you'd be taking away from what it is. And then I started to think about colours, and I started looking at the colours that you could use, the sort of palette that you get when you use the brightest colours you can. And this purple I thought was really brilliant, this sort of rich, overly royal, it's almost ugly. I don't really like purple, but I was thinking about whites and golds and reds. The richest colours I could think of, like gold as in like gold trimmed stuff, and then reds as in like wines and really fabric-y posh stuff, and then purples as in like the colour of royalty. I drifted away from this quite quickly and started to think again about the combination, about what would happen if you combined the simplest form with the richest glaze. And then I started to think about how things drip and how they mould and move, and this movement brought me on to Zoe Preece's work, who we looked at earlier, and I like her work a lot, but she uses dripping to look at the buoyancy between liquid and solid, that tipping point at which things become overfull and suddenly erupt. And it's just incredible to look at. And she uses glazes and porcelain, and I started thinking more and more about this, about the dripping, about the colour she uses is just plain, it's just white and rich, sort of creamy colours, and they're really nice. But there's nothing wrong about it, there's nothing that isn't delicate, there's nothing that isn't simple. And I started to think about what would happen if you just altered the colours slightly, if you just made it slightly less nice. And then I started thinking about candles, because they're very nice, they're very white, and they're very simple, and they create something wonderful. But they also don't last very long. They burn down and they die very quickly. This is just a normal candle, and this is what I started with, and then I started to burn it, and I started to look at the way it melted, trying desperately to stop itself from degrading, and eventually I ended up with this, which is very ugly. It's not a very nice object. It's covered in these burn marks from where it's tried desperately not to be taken down by the flame, and has taken in carbon dioxide from the flame, from the smoke, and it just looks dirty, it looks grubby, but you can see how it represents this desperation to try and not become dead, to be nothing. And I think that is what we are all doing. I think it really represents life on the edge of not existing. And then I started thinking about a poem. This is a picture of a candle that burns at both ends, and I actually did this before I realised about the poem. I knew it was the motto of an author I loved when I was younger called Roald Dahl. And it goes, "My candle burns at both ends, it will not last the night. But are my foes and who my friends, it gives a lovely light." And I really think this encapsulates something wonderful, that even though you're dying, you should try and create something more than yourself. And that's something really great to take away and think about in your day-to-day life, and it's a wonderful motto and a wonderful poem. And I think I'm probably going to think about it a lot more, but by the time I make my next video blog about my designs and my thoughts, I'll probably be on a completely different topic. But it's a nice way to end. Thanks.